devotion, placing themselves continually in trance and executing many types of austerities, many mystic yogis were unable to find the end of the path of God realization. Wow, unable. Text 32. For this reason, my dear boy, you should not endeavor for this. It will not be successful. It is better that you go home when you are grown up by the mercy of the Lord. You will get a chance for these mystic performances. At that time, you may execute this function. Well, the young boy is not going to do that because he's got the what you would call the blood of a kshatriya, so he doesn't give up easily.
Mhm.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada: generally, a thoroughly trained person takes to spiritual perfection at the end of his life, according to the Vedic system. Therefore, life is divided into 4 stages. In the beginning, one becomes a brahmachari, a student who studies Vedic knowledge under the authoritative guidance of his spiritual master. He then becomes a householder and executes household duties according to the Vedic process. Then the householder becomes a vanaprastha, and gradually, when he is mature, he renounces household life and vanaprastha life also and takes to sannyasa, completely devoting himself to devotional service. Generally, people think that childhood is meant for enjoying life by engaging oneself in sports and play. Youth is meant for enjoying the company of young girls. And when one becomes old at that time and becomes old at the time of death, then he may try to execute devotional service or a mystic yoga process. But this conclusion is not for devotees who are actually serious. The great sage Narada is instructing Dhruva Maharaj just to test him. Actually, the direct order is that from any point of life, one should begin rendering devotional service. But it is the duty of the spiritual master to test the disciple to see how seriously he desires to execute devotional service. Then he may be initiated. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram,
Rama
Ram Ram,
Rama,
Hare
Hare.
Hare.
Yeah, you have to be really serious to get initiated. Text 33. One should try to keep himself satisfied in any condition of life, whether distress or happiness, which is offered by the supreme will. A person who endures in this way is able to cross over the darkness of nescience very easily. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Material existence consists of pious and impious fruitive activities. As long as one is engaged in any kind of activity other than devotional service, it will result in the happiness and distress of this material world. When we enjoy life in so-called material happiness, it is to be understood that we are diminishing the resultant actions of our pious activities. And when we are put into suffering, it is to be understood that we are diminishing the resultant actions of our impious activities. Instead of being attached to the circumstantial happiness and distress resulting from pious or impious activities, if we want to get out of the clutches of this nescience or ignorance, then whatever position we are put in by the will of the Lord, we should accept. Thus, if we simply surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we shall get out of the clutches of this material existence. Okay, now that's practical advice. That's why it says material existence exists of pious and impious fruitive activities. As long as one is engaged in any kind of activity other than devotional service, it will result in the happiness and distress of this material world. When we enjoy life in so-called material happiness, it is to be understood that we are diminishing the resultant actions of our pious activities. And when we are put into suffering, it is to be understood that we are diminishing the resultant actions of our impious activities. Okay, so that is wisdom right there. Very, very good wisdom. We should give up all mundane activities and engage in Krishna consciousness. In that way, we will not be tricked to try and enjoy material happiness, but we will be engaged in what you would call very, very serious acts of devotional service. In that way, gradually our fruitive activities will be purified and we will become, let's say, blessed by Krishna and make genuine spiritual advancement. As long as we're engaged in fruitive activities, whether they're in the mode of ignorance or in the mode of goodness, it's still going to keep us in the mode of in material nature. Therefore, we have to make a decision, make a clear breakaway from good and bad actions and engage in pure devotional service without any material motive. The problem is that one may be engaging in pious activities but still have material motives. Therefore, that it says here, instead of being attached to the circumstantial happiness and distress resulting from pious or impious activities, if we want to get out of the clutches of this nescience or ignorance, then whatever position we are put in by the will of the Lord, we should accept. Thus, if we simply surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we shall get out of the clutches of this material existence. So again, the emphasis is on surrendering to Krishna with the help of the bona fide spiritual master. And under the, let's say, guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, so that we don't fall back into an illusory existence, we can make what you would call substantive spiritual advancement and not have a fall down and continue with a lot of vigor and to be Krishna conscious and our whole life. That's why it says here, one should try to keep himself satisfied in any condition of life. When distress or happiness, whether distress or happiness, which is offered by the Supreme Will, a person who endures in this way is able to cross over the darkness of nescience or ignorance very easily. That is real wisdom. That is what a serious devotee is doing in life. Uh, he is satisfied in any condition of life, whether distress or happiness, because he knows that everything's controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So anyone who can endure in this way is able to cross over the darkness of nescience very easily. In other words, not to give up, whether there is success or failure, to continue with determination and what you would call uh, complete faith in spiritual master Krishna, to engage in Krishna conscious activities and not be in any way, let's say, hampered by false knowledge or false or difficult uh, situations in which there might be some suffering. Um, Suffering is a sign that we have made some mistakes in our life. So, therefore, uh, in many ways, it's a good thing because then we think more introspectively and try to more seriously follow the regulative principles. Okay. A nice takeaway here is the statement: instead of being attached to the circumstantial happiness and distress resulting from pious or impious activities, if we want to get out of the clutches of this nescience or ignorance, then whatever position we are put in by the will of the Lord, we should accept. Thus, if we simply surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we shall get out of the clutches of this material existence. There it is. We shall get out of the clutches of this material existence if we simply surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, the statement, my dear Lord Krishna, today I am asking for your mercy, and I am willing to give up all sense gratification and engage wholeheartedly in your devotional service. Whatever happens, I am never going to leave your devotional service, whether in happiness or distress. So those type of statements of affirmation of our unalloyed devotion to the Lord are very helpful. And Krishna, hearing such affirmations of a devotee, will take notice of the devotee and do everything possible to help him or her and their progressive spiritual life. Therefore, it says here, thus, if we simply surrender unto the Supreme Personality Godhead, we shall get out of the clutches of this material existence. Now, how do you surrender to the Lord? You follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness under the scrutiny and advice of bona fide devotees. Then you'll be able to, let's say, simply surrender unto the Supreme Personality Godhead. And then we can get out of the clutches of this material existence. We definitely need the help of bona fide devotees. And why? Because if we make mistakes, we can be corrected. And that's very important because no one is perfect. And it's guaranteed that we will make mistakes. So to have the association of genuine devotees, advanced devotees, and accept their advice is very important to stay on the straight and narrow path of Krishna consciousness. Okay. If we want to get out of the clutches of this nescience or ignorance, then whatever position we are put in by the will of the Lord, we should accept. Thus, if we simply surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we shall get out of the clutches of this material existence. Haribol. Text 34. Every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. And when he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate toward him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Let me read that again, because that's a very profound verse. It says, every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. And when he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate toward him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Generally, when we find someone more qualified than ourselves, we become envious of him. When we find someone less qualified, we deride him. And when we find someone equal, we become very proud of our activities. These are the causes of all material tribulations. Tribulations mean problems, trouble. The great sage Narada therefore advised that a devotee should act perfectly. Instead of being envious of a more qualified man, one should be jolly to receive him. Instead of being oppressive to a less qualified man, one should be compassionate toward him, just to raise him to the proper standard. And when one meets an equal, instead of being proud of one's own activities before him, one should treat him as a friend. One should also have compassion for the people in general who are suffering due to forgetfulness of Krishna. These important functions will make one happy within this material world. You want to be happy? You need to follow this advice, this wisdom that is staring us right in the eye. Therefore, this verse says, every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate toward him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is all wisdom. This is all how to be successful in Krishna consciousness. It says here, generally, when we find someone more qualified than ourselves, we become envious of him. And when we find someone less qualified, we deride him, make fun of him, or criticize him. And when we find someone equal, we become very proud of our activities. These are the causes of material tribulations, material problems, and suffering. The great sage Narada therefore advised that a devotee should act perfectly. Instead of being envious of a more qualified man, he should be jolly to receive him. Instead of being oppressive to a less qualified man, one should be compassionate toward him, just to raise him to the proper standard. And when one meets an equal, instead of being proud of one's own activities before him, one should treat him as a friend. One should also have compassion for the people in general who are suffering due to forgetfulness of Krishna. These important functions will make one happy within this material world. Well, you want to be happy, you should follow the wisdom of Canto 4, Chapter 8, verse number 34. And this is how to relate to other devotees. Someone might be more advanced than us, or someone might be equal to us, or someone might be less advanced than us. So, when one meets an equal person to us, instead of being proud of one's own activities before him, one should treat him as a friend. One should also have compassion for the people in general who are suffering due to forgetfulness of Krishna. These important functions will make one happy within this material world. And before that, it says, Narada Muni advised that a devotee should act perfectly. Instead of being envious of a more qualified man, one should be jolly to receive him. Instead of being oppressive to a less qualified man, one should be compassionate toward him, just to raise him to the proper standard. And when one meets an equal, instead of being proud of one's own activities before him, one should treat him as a friend. One should also have compassion for the people in general who are suffering due to forgetfulness of Krishna. These important functions will make one happy within this material world. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Text 35. Dhruva Maharaj said, my dear Lord Naradaji, Naradaji, for a person whose heart is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress, whatever you have so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a very good instruction. But as far as I am concerned, I am covered by ignorance, and this kind of philosophy does not touch my heart. What a heavy statement that is.
That does.
Whoa. Dhruva, although he's so young, he's a very heavy person. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There are various classes of men. One class is called akamas, referring to those who have no material desire. Desire must exist, either material or spiritual. Material desires, when one wants to satisfy one's personal senses. Material desire arises when one wants to satisfy one's personal senses. One who is ready to sacrifice anything to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be said to have spiritual desire. Dhruva did not accept the instruction given by the great saint Narada because he thought himself unfit for such instruction, which prohibited all material desires. It is not a fact, however, that those who have material desires are prohibited from worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the essential instruction from the life of Dhruva. He frankly admitted that his heart was full of material desires. He was very much affected by the cruel words of his stepmother. Whereas those who are spiritually advanced do not care about anyone's condemnation or adoration. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. But Dhruva Maharaja frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. He was confident that the instruction given by Narada was valuable, yet he could not accept it. Wow, that's a difficult situation to be in. The question raised here is whether or not a person afflicted by material desires is fit to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The answer is that everyone is fit to worship him, even if one has many material desires to fulfill. He should take to Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is so merciful that he fulfills everyone's desires. Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is barred from worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if one has many material desires. And now we see this is the what you would call the uh, special consciousness of someone who's Krishna conscious. He's not, let's say, he's not being judgmental when he encounters people who are not Krishna conscious or very fallen. He feels compassion for them and tries to help them. And when he meets a person that's equal to him in the desire to serve Krishna, he makes friends with them. And when he meets someone who is more spiritually advanced, he's happy and is not in any way envious, but happy to meet such a nice person. Okay, so there's another major statement here, and it says, in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. Okay, what does that mean, dual behavior? Yeah, sometimes everything is going very well, and sometimes nothing is going well. But that does not change the devotee's determination to continue in devotional service. That's why it says, in the Bhagavad Gita, it said that persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. But Dhruva Maharaja frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. Okay, so he's still affected by material happiness and distress. But Dhruva Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. He was confident that the instruction given by Narada was valuable, yet he could not accept it. And that's the case of many people. In fact, almost everyone. They know what is right. They know that the wisdom of the sadhu is correct, but they cannot accept it. The question, even what was it, Duryodhan, or his father, what was the name of his father?
Dhritarashtra.
Dhritarashtra. He knew what his son was doing was wrong, but he couldn't stop him.
Right.
You know, uh, he knew it. He knew it was wrong. And he knew it was going to lead to maybe disaster, but he just couldn't stop him because he was attached materially to the body of his son. Even though he knew that what he was doing was wrong. There are people like that, and it's saying that here. Uh, so here it says, but Dhruva Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. He was confident that the instruction given by Narada was valuable, yet he could not accept it. And there are many people like that. The question raised here is whether or not a person afflicted by material desires is fit to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The answer is that everyone is fit to worship him, even if one has many material desires to fulfill. He should take to Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is so merciful that he fulfills everyone's desires. Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is barred from worshiping the Supreme Persona Godhead, even if one has many material desires. Wow. Wonderful statement. Text 36. My dear Lord, I am very impotent. In other words, very, let's say, not willing to take good advice. Right? So impotent. For not accepting your instructions. But this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. My stepmother, Suruchi, has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart. Wow. Mm-hmm. Because he has a Kshatriya blood. He's basically what is a Kshatriya? A Kshatriya is a person who will fight to the end and is not afraid of dying. So those type of persons are very, let's say, determined, and they're not afraid to die. Therefore, they will fight right to the end. Now, sometimes they'll be successful. Sometimes they will not be successful. But there's no question of giving up. And they never die with a arrow in their back. That means they never run away. They always have the determination to do or die. There's no other, let's say, no other position that they'll take. So there's always been a joke about the Italian army. The Italian army, they say in the Italian army, the Italian tanks have one, let's say, position to go forward and 10 positions to go backwards. In other words, they very easily run away. That might be a wisdom in some circumstances.
So this is actually probably a good example to think about. So if somebody is really hurt, let's say in a domestic situation or whatever, and then we generally give them the advice to, just it's okay and so on. But then just the words may not change their consciousness, right? I mean, it can happen to many people because they're like either seriously hurt or the disturbance is so strong in their mind. Dhruva is in the same situation, Dhruva Maharaj. So even though Narada Muni's instructions, once you are in a Sattva, they all make sense, and then but then he's saying the same thing as we hear. Like if we tell some friends also that we hear this, yeah, it all makes sense, but
I can't follow.
I can't follow. So this is actually practical also. This happens to people. So I'm eager to see what the next steps are, but I think we can advise the same thing. Like they don't need to necessarily change what's in their mind, but they have to stick to the process. Let's say in this case, chanting and sincerely, and then it will automatically purify. Probably.
Yeah, let's hope. Yeah. Yeah, it says here, it is not a fact, however, that those who have material desires are prohibited from worshiping the Supreme Personality of God. This is the essential instruction from the life of Dhruva. Okay, here it comes.
Mm-hmm.
He frankly admitted that his heart was full of material desires. He was very much affected by the cruel words of his stepmother, whereas those who are spiritually advanced do not care about anyone's condemnation or adoration. So he still had a false ego, let's put it like that. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. But Dhruva Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. He was confident that the instruction given by Narada was valuable, yet he could not accept it. Wow, what a situation that is. He knows what Narada Muni is explaining to him is valuable. It's true, truthful, and everything. But he's not ready to accept it. The question raised here is whether or not a person afflicted by material desires is fit to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The answer is that everyone is fit to worship him. So whether you have no desires, whether you have all desires, or whether you have that you're neutral, you should always engage in devotional service. Even if one has many material desires to fulfill, you should take to Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is so merciful that he will fulfill, but that he fulfills everyone's desires. Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is barred from worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if one has many material desires. Well, see, there's a question here. And the question is, what if some of his material desires are evil? On one hand, you can say, okay, he wants to have illicit sex. Okay, fine. And almost everyone is like that. But what if he wants to murder someone? It's also a desire. Is the Lord going to tolerate that? So there has to be some, let's say, takeaway here where it says Even if one has many material desires to fulfill, he should take the Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is so merciful that he fulfills everyone's desires. That's on the understanding that those desires are not wanting to do evil things, right? Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is barred from worshiping the Supreme Personality of God, even if one has many material desires. But see, the understanding, although it's not stated here, the understanding is those are material desires. They're not evil desires to kill someone or do evil things. They have material desires for sense gratification. Well, everybody has material desires for sense gratification. That's not a that will not stop them from making spiritual advancement. And therefore, by following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, your desires, your material desires will be satisfied and your spiritual desires will be achieved. But it's according to Krishna's will, not our will. When I say your material desires will be satisfied, that means that you will be more or less happy following the path of Krishna consciousness, even though you might not get everything you want, but you'll be happy because you're not going deeper into Maya. You are actually making spiritual advancement. People think, no, I want to have all my material desires satisfied. Well, life isn't like that. You can have so many material desires, but you're not going to get all of them satisfied. But if you get a higher taste of Krishna consciousness, then that nagging and what you would call the weakness of always wanting. Weakness is like this: you wake up early in the morning, but you don't want to get out of bed. So when you break that weakness, even though you don't like it, but you say, no, I'm going to get up. I'm going to take that shower. I'm going to come to the class. So that is our tapasya. It's not that we give up and say, no, I'm not getting up today. No, it's duty. So when you're dutiful, even though you have to do things that you don't like to do, still you do it because you're dutiful. Okay, so that's why it says in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. Okay, what does that mean, the dual behavior? Well, sometimes everything is going well, and sometimes nothing goes well, right? But Dhruva Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress. Yeah, he doesn't want to lose. He wants to always win, right? But that's not life. We are going to lose sometimes. So if we lose without being devastated, because we have to understand we can't always win. There's always going to be some setbacks in life, and we have to learn to tolerate it. So it is said that a person who is actually advanced in spiritual life, or persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life, do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. What is the dual behavior of this material world? Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not successful. But Dhruva Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. Well, okay, he's like an ordinary man. He's not beyond the affliction, or he's not beyond the distress, and he's not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. He was confident that the instruction given by Narada was valuable, yet he could not accept it. The question raised here is whether or not a person afflicted by material desires is fit to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The answer is that everyone is fit to worship him, even if one has many material desires to fulfill. He should take the Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is so merciful that he fulfills everyone's desires. Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is banned from worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if one has many material desires. Very nice statements. But what if one's material desires are evil desires? One is so jealous of someone he wants to kill that person. Okay, that's a desire also. Will the Lord satisfy his desire? No. No, there is a limit to what the Lord was going to satisfy. One can perform such evil acts, but he will be severely punished by laws of karma, which are controlled by Krishna himself. Okay, text 36. My dear Lord, I am very impotent for not accepting your instructions. Impotent means that he doesn't listen to what you would call wisdom. He ignores it. My dear Lord, I am very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. My stepmother, Suruchi, has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart. In other words, he's not going to follow good advice because he has that Kshatriya blood in his body. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is said that the heart or mind is just like an earthen pot. Once broken, it cannot be repaired by any means. Dhruva Maharaja gave this example to Narada Muni. He said that his heart, having been pierced by the arrows of his stepmother's harsh words, felt so broken that nothing seemed valuable but his desire to counteract her insult. He wants to fight. His stepmother has said that because he was born from the womb of Suniti, a neglected queen of Maharaja Uttanapada, Dhruva Maharaj was not fit to sit either on the throne or on his father's lap. In other words, according to his stepmother, he could not be declared king. Dhruva Maharaj's determination, therefore, was to become king of a planet exalted even beyond that possessed by Lord Brahma, the greatest of all the demigods. Dhruva Maharaj indirectly informed the great sage Narada that there are 4 kinds of human spirit: the Brahminical spirit, the Kshatriya spirit, the Vaishya spirit, and the Sudra spirit. The spirit of one caste is not applicable to the members of another. The philosophical spirit enunciated by Narada Muni might have been suitable for a Brahmana spirit, but it was not suitable for a Kshatriya. Dhruva frankly admitted that he was lacking in Brahminical humility and was therefore unable to accept the philosophy of Narada Muni. Wow, that's a wonderful statement. The statement of Dhruva Maharaj indicate the statements of Dhruva Maharaj indicate that unless a child is trained according to his tendency, there is no possibility of his developing his particular spirit. It was the duty of the spiritual master or teacher to observe psychological movement of a particular boy and thus train him in a particular occupational duty. Dhruva Maharaj, having already been trained in the Kshatriya spirit, would not accept the Brahminical philosophy. In America, we have practical experience of this incompatibility of the Brahminical and Kshatriya temperaments. The American boys who have simply been trained as Sudras are not at all fit to fight in battle. Therefore, when they are called to join the military, they refuse because they do not have Kshatriya spirit. This is a cause of great dissatisfaction in society. That the boys do not have the Kshatriya spirit does not mean that they are trained in Brahminical qualities. They are trained as Sudras, and thus, in frustration, they are becoming hippies. However, as soon as they enter the Krishna consciousness movement being started in America, they are trained to meet the Brahminical qualifications, even though they have fallen to the lowest conditions as Sudras. In other words, since the Krishna consciousness movement is open for everyone, people in general can attain the Brahminical qualifications. That is the greatest need at the present moment. For now, there are actually no Brahmanas or Kshatriyas, but only some Vaishyas and, for the most part, Sudras. The classification of society into Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras is very scientific. In the human social body, the Brahmanas are considered the head, and the Kshatriyas are the arms, the Vaishyas are the belly, and the Sudras are the legs. At the present moment, the body has legs and a belly, but there is no arms or head. And therefore, society is topsy-turvy. It is necessary to reestablish the Brahminical qualifications in order to raise the fallen human society to the highest standard of spiritual consciousness. Now, well, let's analyze this a little bit. This is interesting. In other words, there are no Kshatriyas or Brahmanas today. Everyone Sudra. But one can be trained to become a Vaishnava devotee. Now, Vaishnava devotee is superior to the Brahmana and Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra positions. That is what Krishna consciousness is. Simply being helping someone who is a Sudra becoming a Brahmana is not really going to solve the problem. However, if one is elevated to the position of becoming a devotee, that solves the problem. So being a devotee is superior to Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. In what way? Well, when you're a devotee, you are trained to be humble. Now, a Kshatriya, it's hard for a Kshatriya to be humble, right? They have that fighting spirit, right? Brahmanas can be humble, but sometimes, in fact, most of the time, they're proud. So the devotee is trained to be very humble and in other words, a devotee can be as soft as a rose and hard as a thunderbolt. When he sees nonsense things happening, he can be like a thunderbolt. And when he sees situations where people are suffering, he becomes very, very soft-hearted and wants to help them in every way. Okay, so here it says, the classification of society into Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, and Sudras is very scientific. In this human social body, the Brahmanas are considered to be the head, the Kshatriyas are the arms, and the Vaishyas are the belly. And the Sudras are the legs. At the present moment, the body has legs and belly, but there is no arms or head. And therefore, society is topsy-turvy. It is necessary to reestablish the Brahminical qualifications in order to raise the fallen human society to the highest standard of spiritual consciousness. So, what is Prabhupada advocating or recommending here? Yeah, it sounds like he wants to reestablish the Brahmana situation. But it's a fact, everybody cannot be a Brahmana. Some people will never become genuine Brahmanas. So then what is he talking about here? Well, what's not being said here is Prabhupada is actually training people to become genuine Vaishnavas. That is superior to Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. It's not being said here, but it will be said farther along in these purports. Simply becoming a Brahmana is not the ultimate solution to all problems of life. There are many Brahmanas who are very, very proud of themselves. So we should not think that that's the summum bonum, the highest position you can achieve. The highest position is the lowest, the most humble, the most meek, and the most Krishna conscious person. But even though one is very meek and gentle, if it's necessary, they can be harder than a thunderbolt, but not for their personal aggrandizement, but for protecting the principles of Krishna consciousness in the society. They can be very, very, let's say, adamant to maintain the principles of Krishna consciousness, but not for their own personal benefit. In other words, why should one follow rules and regulations? It is for the safety and progressiveness of Krishna consciousness, not for one's own prestige and let's say desires for adoration and sense gratification. Okay, so yeah, this whole idea of being famous, being let's say in very prominent position and having the respect of many, many people, that can be dangerous. So, although a person might be spiritually very advanced, they always maintain a humble and meek nature. Meek does not mean weak. Well, in other words, being meek does not mean that you are weak. Being meek means that you have a soft heart, but you can be harder than a thunderbolt also when it is necessary. Okay, so it is necessary to reestablish the Brahminical qualifications in order to raise the fallen human society to the highest standard of spiritual consciousness. Well, that will only happen if devotees are trained to be Vaishnavas, not simply Brahmanas, but Vaishnavas. Well, the position of Vaishnava is superior to that of a Brahmana. This was argued and established long ago, that the position of a Vaishnava is superior to the position of Brahmana. So Prabhupada, although he's talking about Brahmanas, Vaishyas, Sudras, and so forth, but actually he's training devotees to become Vaishnavas. That is superior to being a Brahmana. In what way is it superior? Because of the soft-hearted nature of Vaishnavas. They do not like to see other people suffering. But on the other hand, they, help people who are in difficulty, but they can also become as strong as a thunderbolt to stop people from being nasty and making others suffer. Anyone who scares people, that scaring people is actually a sin. And the Vaishnava will intercede and stop someone from scaring others. Just like when Indra sent these horrible rain clouds to Vrindavana to make the devotees suffer, Krishna acted right away and lifted Govardhan Hill to function as a big umbrella and saved all the devotees from the terrible wind and rain and so forth. So, yeah, a devotee can be soft as a rose and harder than a thunderbolt. Devotees are not chickens. They're not afraid. On the other hand, they don't use their strength to exploit other people. They only act in Krishna consciousness to help people, but not to exploit them. And see, that's very rare. When you help someone, usually you try to exploit them also. But to help someone without any desire to exploit them, that means you're a genuine person and your help is also genuine. Like the United States. The United States helped Europe in World War I and World War II. Both times they helped Europe. Otherwise, Europe would have been either communist or whatever. It would have been destroyed in both situations. But the United States did not use their superior power to subjugate Europe. After the war was over, they went back to the United States and let the Europeans, uh, freed the Europeans to continue in their normal, let's say, position, not being controlled by outside the forces. So the Europeans have, at one time, had great respect for the United States Army, because two times the United States Army, freed the Europeans from being controlled, either in World War I or World War II. But today, the Europeans still respect the Americans for helping them in those two world wars. But on the other hand, they're not, let's say, being controlled by the United States. They are given a position of equality. Although sometimes people like Trump and others, they want them to listen to what we say. In other words, listen to what the politicians in America say. But oftentimes the Europeans don't listen. That means they have their independence. And the Americans, two times, they saved the Europeans from being completely controlled by the Nazis or the other forces. So the Europeans do not want to feel as if they are subordinate to the United States. So sometimes they will not agree with the politicians in America. But that, of course, is not Krishna conscious. It's all about mundane politics. Okay, so it is necessary to reestablish the Brahminical qualifications in order to raise the fallen human society to the highest standard of spiritual consciousness. Well, who is being trained to be Brahminical? Well, obviously, that's not trained. That training is not in the schools. Yeah, in the schools they'll say, well, thou shalt not kill. They teach what do you call principles, Christian principles, mostly. But Vaishnava principles are superior to Christian principles. Just like Jesus, he only accepted those people that surrendered to him. But someone like saints in Krishna consciousness, they don't give their mercy. They give their mercy to everyone, whereas in Christianity or Jesus, he only gives his mercy to those who are surrendered to him. So therefore, the Vaishnava is superior even to Jesus, because he doesn't ask anyone to surrender. He helps everyone, whether they're surrendered or not. Whereas Jesus, he only helped those people who surrendered to him. Okay. So that's a big issue, and it can be discussed more. Somebody might not accept what I just said. So it should be discussed. and understood. Okay, so I think we'll stop there. Are there any questions, comments? No questions, no comments, no answers.
Any questions or comments online? I do not see any raised hands. Any comments? Yeah, but I think this one is a huge instruction for all of us. Like every one of us face this kind of. In fact, also we have to think about like new people that come in. They have to be able to see what kind of mode maybe they may be in, and then guide in the appropriate way.
Definitely.
That's why our prasadam is our best. It works for everybody.
Well, prasadam is very important, but how it is offered is even more important. It should be offered with love and devotion. It shouldn't be offered by, like when you go on the food truck, you shouldn't think that, oh, these are just bums. You know, yeah, they might be homeless, but it doesn't mean that they are not worthy of respect. So whatever we do, let's say in the food truck, it should always be done with respect. We shouldn't look down on the people that are coming to get prasadam. We should always treat them with respect, and they'll see. Now, I know that it's happened in the past when a person came to the food truck and the devotee that was distributing the food had a let's say negative opinion of the what you would call bums that were coming. Some of them refused the food, the prasadam, because it wasn't offered with respect. Everyone should be given a modicum of respect because they're human beings. They might be very fallen, but still they are human beings, and we should see that Krishna is there in their hearts. Krishna is in the heart of all living entities. Therefore, we should always treat people with respect, because if we insult a person, well, Krishna is also insulted in a sense, because we're not respecting a person with good behavior. We are using bad behavior. Now, let's say a person commits criminal activity. Well, the punishment is also respect, because it may help that person never to do that criminal activity again. So punishment is, when it's done for rehabilitation, it's not bad, it's good. The criminal might find it as being bad, but actually those criminals who are benefited by the punishment they get, they turn into good citizens, and they're left, they get out of jail, and then they become a good citizen. Right? The ones that are recidivists, every time they go to jail and then they come out and they commit another crime, they need to be locked up for good. But most people, I would say, more than 50% of people that go to jail, they benefit. from the experience and turn out to be good citizens. And then there are others who never learn their lesson. As soon as they get out, they continue to do bad things. So, one time there was this criminal who had murdered some people, and he saw this one lady get out of her car, and she had, some, a bag of food that she had just bought, and she went to her uh, apartment, and when she unlocked the door, this criminal ran and pushed her into the house and locked the door behind him. And now she became, under his control. And he tied her up, and it looked really bad. But she did not, let's say, scream. She did not, protest too much. And by speaking nicely, and finally she convinced the criminal, look, why don't you untie me and I will cook you a nice dinner. And one thing led to another, and then he agreed. And they had a very nice dinner, and they talked all night long. And he was explaining, she asked him, how come you've gotten yourself in this situation, and he explained, his life story, and she listened, and then that went on all night long, and then in the morning she told him, look, I have to go and buy some more things so I can make lunch for you. He said, okay. So she went and called the police, and then when she came back, she told him that she called the police. And he wasn't really angry because she treated him so nicely, and all night long they were talking, and he was explaining, his whole life story, and she was listening, and she was commiserating with him and so forth. So, and then she told him that, she had talked to the police and they were going to come and arrest him. But she said, if you go to jail, I promise to see you every month and bring nice prasadam food for you and so forth. And so he could have killed her very easily. He had already killed other people. But because they spent the whole night together talking, and she cooked for him, and she listened to his whole story, and so he developed some respect for her, although he was a murderer, and he didn't kill her. Now, not every situation is going to be like that, but this man accepted to go to jail, and then she would visit him at least more than once in a month, several times in a month, and bring him some prasadam or food and things like that. So he accepted to be, punished for what he did. He actually murdered people. He could have murdered that lady also, but she treated him so nicely that he developed some respect for her. And then she reciprocated by always going to the jail and bringing him, food or whatever he wanted, and would talk to him nicely. He could have very easily killed her because he had killed so many other people. But it's because of her nice behavior that he didn't, and he developed some respect for her, and she reciprocated that. Now, not all situations are going to be like that. Uh, some people become criminals because of being badly treated in life, and but that doesn't mean that all criminals cannot be rehabilitated. There are some that might never be rehabilitated, but there are others that, due to different situations that they experience, made them have a criminal, let's say, uh, consciousness. But by being treated nicely and with respect, they may be rehabilitated.
Mm.
I mean, they still have to go to jail, but if they're not treated uh, with compassion, they'll get even more hardened and criminal. But if they're treated with compassion, they can change. They become like a normal person who follows the rules and regulations of society. Okay, so I think we'll stop there. Thank you very much. Please chant Hare Krishna and be happy. And we'll continue tonight hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Unless someone has a question.
I don't think there's any questions. So, Hare Krishna. So we'll